you want to travel the world, there are only two options. You either fly or sail across the vast oceans of the world. Planes might be faster, but ships can offer more beautiful scenery, incredible moments, and even more comfort. Starting this video off right, do you know what happens when a ship reaches the end of its service life? Well, a ship can sail for about 30 years, sometimes even longer. But once that time passes, it's taken to a shipyard to be dismantled. The thing is, not all ships make it to their final resting place. Many of them end up abandoned along the way. So now check out the 10 most incredible and surprising abandoned ships in the world. 1. Shipwreck beach. Why start with just one shipwreck when we can start with a beach full of them? If you travel to the Hawaiian island of Lanai, you'll find a coastline where the wreckage of several forgotten ships lies scattered. It's called Shipwreck Beach, a stretch of about 10 kilometers that holds the remains of 12 different vessels. The trail begins with the Yonge 42, an old U.S. Navy concrete tanker, and ends with the YO-21, another Navy ship that once served as an oil tanker. Some of the wrecks that ended up here were caused by strong ocean currents and intense local winds, but not all of them got here by accident. In the 19th century, that beach turned into an informal dumping ground. Ship owners who didn't want to pay dismantling costs simply abandoned their vessels there. Most of those ships rotted away over time, but the Yonge 42 and the YO-21 were built with concrete instead of wood, so they're still almost fully intact. 2. Abandoned island double shipwreck. If you head toward the Leeward Islands in the Caribbean, you'll find Curacao, an abandoned island with a slightly eerie vibe. Completely deserted, not a single sign of life nowadays. But it wasn't always like that. The biggest proof of that stands firm and alone, an empty lighthouse with no one left to operate it. But it's not entirely alone. It's got company. 2 shipwrecks lie nearby. One of them is what's left of the Maria Bianca Guidesman, once a proud oil tanker. Back in the 1960s, it ran aground so violently on Klein Carico that it split in half. After damage like that, any rescue attempts were hopeless. Since then, the ship's remains have been baking under the sun, slowly falling apart for nearly 60 years. The second ship is more mysterious. Its origins are hard to trace. But if it could talk, it might tell a shameful story. The Dutch West India Company often passed through that region during the transatlantic slave trade, and the island was once used to quarantine 6 enslaved people in a makeshift hospital. Its ruins are still visible today. That second ship may very well have been a slave ship, and that might explain why no one ever claimed it or revealed the real reason it was left there. 3. The mysterious Crete boom. Even though it's a small piece of land, Ireland has a surprising number of shipwrecks scattered along its coasts and riverbanks, and one of the most curious ones lies in Ballinakey, in County Mayo. That's where you'll find the SS Crete boom, an abandoned ship forever stuck in the River Moy. The vessel is over 100 years old, and its construction was far from ordinary. During World War I, traditional shipbuilding materials were in short supply, which is why the Crete boom was made out of concrete, a rare choice for a ship. Built in 1917, it was originally used to transport iron ore from Spain to England. After the war, it was bought by a London company and repurposed to carry coal between mainland Europe and the UK. The ship only ended up in Ireland in 1937, already in terrible condition. The plan was to scuttle it in a controlled way to make it part of a barrier at the river's mouth. But before it reached that final destination, it hit rocks, began to take on water, and was doomed. The only option was to tow it to the middle of the river. And ever since then, it's been stuck there, motionless forever, like a floating ghost from the past. 4. World Discoverer, the Stranded Explorer. It's kind of ironic that a ship named World Discoverer has been stuck in the same place for over 20 years. But that was exactly the fate of the World Discoverer. Despite its sad ending, the ship's story is full of adventure. It was built in 1974 in Germany and sold to a Danish company as a cruise ship. Later, it was transferred to another cruise company, this time based in Singapore. For 16 years, the ship sailed across the world's oceans, taking passengers on unforgettable journeys. By 1990, age had started to show, but it underwent a full renovation and returned to the seas almost like new, now flying the Liberian flag. It could have remained in service to this day, if not for a tragic accident. In April 2000, the World Discoverer struck a reef near the Solomon Islands. The damage was severe. All passengers were safely rescued, but the heroic captain, Oliver Croyce, chose to stay on board. He steered the ship into Roderick Bay, allowing valuables and belongings to be safely removed. But for the ship, there was no saving it. After 26 years of service, it was left behind, a once great explorer brought to a halt, trapped in a single place. 5. Russia's concrete ship. As strange as it might sound, Britain wasn't the only country building concrete ships. Near the mouth of the Volga River, close to Astrakhan in Russia, not far from the Caspian Sea, you'll find the remains of a very unusual vessel. Little is known about it, but it's a hybrid structure made partly of concrete and partly of steel. Based on its size and internal layout, it's believed to have been a tanker, built to carry heavy cargo during its operational days. Now completely abandoned and unwatched, the ship has become a hotspot for the curious. That's how we got footage from inside. The lower decks are already flooded. In several areas, the concrete is crumbling, exposing the steel mesh that once supported the structure. Clearly, this ship was left to fend for itself long ago, and it's far beyond repair. The mystery remains. What was it carrying? Who was part of its crew? Today, all that's left are the echoes of a shipwreck past, wrapped in rust, silence, and solitude. 6. Questor der Har, New York's forgotten submarine. Everyone's heard the classic Beatles song, Yellow Submarine. But did you know there's a real yellow submarine abandoned in the waters of Coney Island Creek in New York? You can still make out the color, even though it's now covered in a thick layer of orange rust. Its name, Questor I. This 45-foot-long submarine was built in 1967 in Brooklyn by one man, Jerry Bianco. Yes, he built the whole thing himself using scrap metal, with one bold mission in mind: to recover the lost treasures from the wreck of the SS Andrea Doria, an Italian ship that sank near Nantucket 11 years earlier. But fate wasn't on his side. When it came time to lower the Questor into the water, the crane slipped. The sub fell sideways into a mud bank and got stuck right there. Bianco tried everything, refilling the ballast, attempting to refloat the sub, but nothing worked. In the end, he had to abandon his dream, and Questor stayed grounded for years. Then in 1981, something unexpected happened. The submarine broke loose and drifted into the water. Today, during low tide and clear skies, you can still see the upper part of Questor Vincorn, like a rusted ghost of a dream that almost came true. 7. The Tangalooma Shipwrecks. If you're fascinated by shipwrecks and love to dive, this place is a tailor-made paradise. Tangalooma Island Resort in Australia is home to one of the most unique formations on the planet, the Tangalooma Shipwrecks. 15 ships were deliberately sunk by the Queensland government between 1963 and the 1980s. The goal was simple: to create a safe anchorage point for other vessels. But the result? One of the most vibrant marine ecosystems on Australia's coast. Over 100 species of fish live among the wrecks. And don't be surprised if a pod of dolphins shows up to say hi. They love swimming around the site. Over time, some of the ships have deteriorated quite a bit, but you can still easily spot the silhouette of the Maybaro, built in 1885. Other names from this ghost fleet include the Bream, Morwong, Kookaburra, and Pelican. And don't worry if you're not a strong swimmer. You can even rent a sea scooter and zip through the submerged wrecks in style. 8. USS Arizona, the sunken memorial of Pearl Harbor. This next shipwreck also draws thousands of visitors every year, but not for the same touristy reasons as the others. What brings people here is respect, remembrance, and history. We're talking about the USS Arizona Memorial in Hawaii, one of the most symbolic places of World War II. The USS Arizona was sunk during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. The event that pushed the United States fully into the global conflict. 2 decades later, a memorial was built above the wreckage, allowing around 2 million people each year to visit the site, without touching it, preserving the structure as much as possible. Since 1989, the The remains of the ship have been considered a National Historic Landmark. But if you've been meaning to see this living piece of history, you might want to hurry. In 2018, a large crack was discovered in the hull. Even after repairs, the crack quickly returned, and visits were suspended for a year. Access has since been restored, but the structure's lifespan is uncertain. Time doesn't stop, not even for ships that helped shape the world's destiny. 9. Duke of Lancaster. The fun ship that fell silent. There's still hope of saving the TSS Duke of Lancaster, but the clock is ticking. This British steamship operated throughout Europe between 1956 and 1979, carrying passengers as a classy train ferry. When it was retired, the plan was to turn it into a large entertainment hub, but things didn't go as planned. After being purchased by a Welsh company, the idea was simple: transform the ship into a floating amusement park packed with arcades and attractions. It even got a new nickname, the Fun Ship. But local authorities weren't on board with the plan. What was supposed to be a fresh start turned into a legal battle that dragged on until 2004. In the end, the owners gave up, and the ship has been stranded on the banks of the River Dee in Wales ever since. Despite its rusted exterior, the interior of the Duke of Lancaster remains surprisingly well preserved. In 2012, a new project brought some hope, turning the ship into a street art gallery. Some of Europe's top graffiti artists were invited to cover the hull with stunning pieces. But in 2017, everything changed without warning. The ship was painted black from bow to stern, and no official explanation was ever given. Since then, total silence. Today, it rests like an unfinished masterpiece, still waiting, maybe, for a second chance. 10. Swanee Belle, the ship that became a legend and a lament. Back in the United States, deep in the heart of Pennsylvania, lies a vessel that looks like it sailed straight out of another century. But despite its old-fashioned appearance, the Swanee Belle isn't actually as old as it seems. It was built in 1985 by the La Crosse Riverboat Company in Wisconsin, inspired by an old steamboat that once cruised the Suwannee River in Florida. At first, the new Swanee carried up to 150 passengers between the Hudson River and East Bay in New York. But that phase didn't last long. It was soon moved to Alabama, then to Johns Pass in Florida, and finally in January 1988, it returned to the Suwannee River, just like its predecessor. But fate wasn't kind. In November of the same year, a storm tore the boat from its moorings. It drifted over 60 kilometers before running aground at Hernando Beach, damaged and with a ruptured hydraulic line. After that, it was officially retired in 1991. A decade later, a businessman bought the ship and moved it to Pennsylvania, planning to turn it into a floating restaurant. But the company went bankrupt before the project ever got off the ground. Since then, Swanee Belle has remained abandoned, a ghost of a dream that never came true. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. See you next time.